champs, and welcome back to another year, another season of Keeping Karlsson Presents Short Shifts. My name is Ben Burnett. I am extremely excited to be here sitting on my brand new podcasting desk. That's right, I'm bringing in 2020 in style, my very first desk. No more kitchen casting for your boy. And of course, it is time for me to welcome my co-host, Louis Ezekiel. Louis, how are you doing, buddy?
Great. We are coming back like the Dallas Stars in an outdoor game in the Big D.
That is 100% accurate. And Louis, I like to think that I'm excited because of my new desk. I like to think you right now off of school, you must be feeling a little bit more energized than usual as well.
I think I got a little bit of lead in the legs, when you have some time off, but I've been working on sort of getting myself back into game shape these last couple days, so I hope that I can put up a performance worthy of my draft rating.
I'm sure you can. Folks, we have a very special episode for you tonight. This is going to be our Midseason Shifty Awards. The Shifty Awards, of course, a very prestigious, never before heard of award show where we are going to give first half awards for fantasy performances to a number of players tonight, culminating in, of course, the Most Valuable Player award. Louis and I are each going to have picks for this one, and then we are going to argue about it. We are also going to have some special guests tonight. Of course, we are brought to you by Keeping Karlsson, the best fantasy hockey podcast hosted by two guys who own Erik Karlsson in their keeper pool. Louis and I think one half of us has Erik Karlsson in the keeper pool. Is that right?
I'm pretty sure I'm the only Keeping Karlsson employee at this point who owns him in a keeper pool, but we'll just switch it to a C, and then I think lots of us will be able to apply. I actually have both Karlssons in my keeper.
And therefore, you must be doing pretty well.
Yeah, I'm doing all right for myself. Quite happy.
All right, well, let's get into tonight's show. Of course, the Shifty Awards, we are going to have a number of categories. We're going to start with the Biggest Flop Award. Louis, I personally did not think up a clever title for this one. Do you have anything in the chamber for a huge flop?
I don't know if it's anything that Bryan will let us pass through quality control for our biggest flop. So we'll just call it our faceplant shifty here for person who we're just most disappointed with for how they've performed so far this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you go first on this one?
All right. Well, I've got somebody that I think a number of people will certainly agree with. I am going to give the first of our shifties out to Brent Burns for our Biggest Flop Award. So we'll be looking at these through the lens of cupful scoring, and just to run through it kind of briefly, we count. It's a points league, 4.5 points for a goal. So plus the shot, you've got 5 points there. 3 points for an assist, a half point for a shot or a block, a quarter of a point for a hit. And a shorthanded point will earn you an extra point there. We'll talk about goalies when we get to goalies. But yeah, Burns, by the scoring rating, was set to be the preseason number 9. He is currently coming in at about the halfway point of the season at the 163rd player. I very much doubt that Brent Burns was available in anyone's leagues outside of the top 100, and even that is a pretty massive stretch. In terms of average fantasy points per game, Burns is tied for 13th among defensemen. He's behind Karlsson, Josi, Hamilton, Hedman, Letang, Weber, Clefbaum, Edler, Pietrangelo, Makar, Ellis, Werenski, tied with Jacob Trouba, and barely ahead of Drew Doughty. Ben, you think you could have had Edler for less than Burns at your draft table?
Maybe a few picks after, anyway.
So I feel like the caveman has devolved a little bit. We may be calling him Australopithecus afarensis last season. But hey, here on Thursday night, he's got himself an assist.
Hey, I'm into that. Brent Burns is a player who I definitely have advocated selling high on in the past. So yeah, if you picked Brent Burns in the first round, you are definitely not feeling good about the second half. And that's kind of where I'm struggling on this award is, Brent Burns, I think, is a great pick. A lot of the ones that I would think to go with are players who I think could bounce back, like a Johnny Gaudreau, someone who I believe is ranked in the 230s of Cupful on a per game basis, even after being drafted probably in the third round, by the third round in most leagues. That's sort of the type of player who your mind kind of jumps to, but I actually kind of like Johnny Gaudreau for a second half bounce back, so it's tough for me to pick a player like that. So instead, I went similar to you. I took a different San Jose Sharks defenseman. How do you like Erik Karlsson? Ranked 189th on a per game basis, really struggling to put together anything resembling really struggling to put together anything resembling a productive offensive season. And then you match that with the tremendous fall off in shots per game. He really just isn't doing anything at an elite pace anymore. And at least with Brent Burns, you're looking at somebody who's producing on the back end stats a little bit more than Karlsson, shooting and hitting. I can't with Erik Karlsson. If you got him in the second round or the first, you are unhappy with yourself right now.
Yeah, and I think just overall, I feel like the biggest flop award in terms of how a team is doing, I think there's no doubt that it's got to be the Sharks for their performance so far this season. I thought a little bit about the Devils just because there was a lot of preseason hype, although I feel like I probably bought into that more than maybe your average person with some of my picks, including Gusev, who I dropped before he recovered. And I picked up Corey Crawford, too, which is looking like a pretty hideous draft pick at this point. So I would say, narrowly edging out the Devils, we should have the Sharks as our biggest flop for the team awards.
What about goaltending, Lewis? If we were to just go into the goaltend, you kind of raise an interesting point talking about Corey Crawford, but what player would you call the biggest flop goaltending-wise so far this year?
Well, for me, I think certainly Schneider did I say Crawford before? I think
you did say Crawford. Okay.
My mistake. But Crawford, I think, is an interesting pick as well, just because he's kind of been bested so far by Robin Lehner, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Yeah, with goaltending, I don't think the Sharks should have expected, or anyone should have expected the Sharks goaltending to be especially great. You might find your Price owners or maybe your Vasilevsky owners being the people who feel like they have gotten the least return for maybe where they spent their draft pick. Especially Vasilevsky, I think, has, he's been fine in terms of wins now that the Lightning have kind of picked it up. Definitely a very rough start to the season, but a second year in a row where really he has been fairly average outside of those wins categories since Tampa Bay has great offense, but really not doing a whole lot for you in terms of rate stats or fantasy points.
I think if it were me, I would stay in that state, but I'd flip over to the other team in Sunrise. Bobrovsky's still under a 900 on the season, only 14 wins in his, 30-some appearances. Besides a stretch in mid-December where he had, I think, 4 or 5 straight quality starts, he has just been absolutely abysmal, posting another 5 games with a sub-900 to start at the end of 2019 and to start 2020. Woof.
Yeah, that's really grim. I think that's a great selection, Sergei Bobrovsky. People were excited about his opportunity on a team with some great offense, but it just hasn't been there.
All right, Lewis, let's move on from the biggest flop award. Let's get into something that is really good, I guess. We'll call it the Hot Wings Award. And, Lewis, I'll let you explain why we're calling this the Hot Wings Shifty.
Well, so Benn comes to me and he says, what's something where the second half is really good? And I went to
that
Hot
sounds
Wings
very sexual off top.
Well, all right, fair enough. But, you spend the first half of your Hot Wings eating experience kind of burning through your defenses a little bit there, and then your second half is like the pure fire portion. So that's sort of what we're looking for here. We want to see who we think will be fire in the second half. And if I can jump into my nominee, I have got Shea Theodore as somebody that I am keeping my eye on for a big-time second-half breakout. Even with his recent success, it's already maybe started to begin. He's still barely over a half point per game. But he's 7th overall for defensemen in shots on goal. He's got a stranglehold over the power play deployment for Vegas. And he's already created 2/3 of last year's individual high danger chances. So I'm feeling very good about his opportunity to break his career points mark. He only needs 12 more points to reach 35, which would tie his all-time high. And I am going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to project Shea Theodore for a 60-point pace the rest of the way through the season.
Oh, damn. That's pretty hot.
Yeah, I think so. I'm feeling pretty good about Shea Theodore here.
All right, well, okay. I feel less hot about my take now, and I thought that it was going to be a pretty hot take, but I do like Shea Theodore. 60. So how many goals do you think he's going to score in is it 40 more games here?
I think he's got 39 more. When I was looking on Natural Stat Trick, I think it said he had 43, and that 39 may count Thursday night's game, which has not started yet at the time of this recording.
So 39, and then if he's if he's 7th in the league rather in shots on goal, you're expecting him to score a few goals, I would imagine, to get up to that 60 point range. So what kind of a clip do you see him scoring at?
So he's shooting at under 5% right now on his 114 shots. Let's say it maybe dips a little bit and he ends up with around 200. I would expect for him to have between 12 and 14, 15 goals, maybe.
12 and 15 would be hot, though, right? Like that would be. Are we talking full season or rest of season?
Oh no, sorry, I'm talking for his total full season, right? So that would be like 7 or 8 more goals.
7 or 8 on we'll say 80 more shots then.
Sure. I think he can do a little bit better than that shot wise, but yeah, something in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I suppose, right? Like, we'd probably be looking at 110, 120. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, I could see that. So then to finish off at a 60-point pace, he would need to have, 25 assists on that? 32 out of 39?
Yeah, something around there. Yep.
I'm sorry to be doing math on our podcast. No, it's more than that. Times 82. Hold on. I'm so sorry that this is happening.
That's okay. We can edit it.
32 divided by 39 times 82. Oh, that'd be a lot more. Okay, so he needs fewer than 25. That would give him a 67-point pace if he had 32 points on 39 more games, 25 more assists. I definitely don't think that that's too crazy. I like it. It's a good pick. I think that Shea Theodore could be someone that breaks out here, especially because even with the dips that he's seen this season, we haven't seen a dip in his deployment. So you love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to keep his deployment, and I think he's going to be able to do a little bit more with it in the second half.
All right, I'm going to go with somebody who I also think is going to give us 60 points rest of season. However, it is a forward, so it's a little bit less hot in that sense. However, the reason why I think that this is a good breakout pick is because from a peripheral standpoint, the guy is such a beast. This is someone who I've kind of cooled off on towards the beginning of the season, and now that I look at his full season rate stats, once you regress some of these numbers, he looks like someone who is primed for a breakout. I am talking about the Dallas Stars captain, Jamie Benn. Currently shooting 7% at even strength, which is by far his lowest he's ever seen. He's got a 56% IPP, which is by far the lowest he's ever seen. And his on-ice shooting percentage is below 8%, which is, again, as I'm sure you can guess, the lowest he's ever had. All of these numbers just project regression, and given the fact that you're looking at someone who produces really high hit rates and the shots have been extremely good the last few weeks, I just think that Jamie Benn is someone who's going to be really useful in the second half of a lot of leagues.
I would love to see it. You know, I was a long-time Jamie Benn holder in my keeper leagues. I always enjoyed having him around. It's been sort of disappointing to see how things have gone more recently. I think it would be great if he could get back on that horse and have a 60-point pace the rest of the season.
All right, Lewis, we're moving on to some additional content. Is that right?
Yeah, so we have a guest spot here from our boy Dave Betton of the Stream Scheme. He wanted to present the Shifty for Streamer of the Year.
Hello everyone, my name is Dave Benn. I am the host of the Stream Scheme, which is part of the Keeping Karlsson podcast network. Thank you to Ben and Lewis for allowing me to present the Shifty for the Streamer of the Year so far. A lot of great candidates, and I even had to clarify with Ben, hey, are we talking calendar year? Because come on, that's Jared McCann easy. Yes, we McCann, who doesn't remember that? But if we're talking just the 2019-2020 season so far, I think we absolutely have to go with Anthony Duclair from the Ottawa Senators. We originally gave out Anthony Duclair as a weekly streamer pick on our show on October 19th. However, Keeping Karlsson Facebook patrons had gotten their money's worth that month because I actually gave out Duclair as a streamer pick on the Facebook group before that show even happened. I was so excited about him. At the time of this show, however, Anthony Duclair was only 2% owned, which even qualified him to be a ludicrous streamer pick that week, but I liked him so much, I made him my top streamer pick that week. Hopefully everyone held on to him because he's currently 34th overall in Cupful points right now, outperforming superstars like Kucherov, Stamkos, Wheeler, Tavares, etc. This is why everyone should be listening to the Stream Scheme, because it is picking up players like Duclair that could absolutely win your season for you. Should you sell high on him if you own him? Yeah, of course, but don't sell yourself too short. Anthony Duclair, your mid-season 2019-2020 Streamer of the Year.
What a pro. Love to hear from Dave.
Yes, Dave, that is why you should be listening to the Stream Scheme. He is 100% correct about that. An amazing show. And I love to hear it because, of course, I do have Anthony Duclair in the Cupful. And if you've been listening to Short Shifts, you've also heard me call that. I think I called a 30-goal season for Anthony Duclair a few weeks ago on this very show. So to see him hit 21 before even getting to the 40-game mark was pretty exciting for me.
Absolutely. Do you have anyone else that you can think of as a potential streamer of the year that maybe could compete or at least be mentioned in the same sentence as the Duke among our other great successes of the year picking up from free agency?
Yeah, I definitely don't think that anyone really comes close, although you do have to give credit to a couple of Penguins. I think that Tristan Jarry in particular could wind up being, in the top 10 of goaltending performances this year if he keeps it up. But it's pretty tough to feel as confident in him as you do as someone with Duclair, who has been able to maintain a really solid shot rate. And despite the fact that his shooting percentage has peaked quite a bit over the past few weeks, I think there's enough space for regression on the assist side of things. He added an assist tonight that I think that Duclair is definitely the safest bet. I think, there's another player in Ottawa, Jean-Gabriel Pageau, deserves a little bit of mention here, but once again, I do think it's much more likely Duclair keeps it up than Pageau.
All right, so I want to just throw out a couple other options who maybe are not as exciting as Duclair, but certainly have proven their mettle as some really effective streamer pickups, folks that you might stream in and never be able to stream out again. Those would be Tony DeAngelo, TDA, in New York, who really has been outstanding. He seems to have ended the back and forth between himself and Adam Fox for control over the lethal top power play deployment. So he's been really effective for us, I think, as far as, listen, you laugh, but if there's one thing that New York has going for it, they've got some scoring acumen, even if they can't play a lick of defense.
I thought you were making fun of my Rangers is why I laughed, because you called them a lethal top power play unit. I agree with you. I like that power play in New York.
Yeah, I was not being too tongue-in-cheek there, I don't think. And then I wanted to propose Alex Killorn as a possibility. AK-17 has been extremely valuable for anyone who grabbed him off the waiver wire starting about 3 weeks ago with some nice schedule for Tampa Bay and just getting some really nice deployment that he hasn't seen so much before, or at least has only seen in passing lately, but getting onto the top six in Tampa Bay, obviously, is really nice, and getting some top power play time has been great value for his owners.
Yeah, I think another guy who I definitely would have had on my list if we had done this show a few weeks ago, is Jakub Vrana in Washington, but he's really cooled off the past few weeks. I don't think he's scored a goal I guess since December 6th. So, and not getting any primo deployment now that Washington's top power play unit is all healthy. So a bummer for Jakub Vrana owners, but a few weeks ago I probably would have had him even above Anthony Duclair.
All right, well, let's jump into the next of our shifties. As you know, Average Time on Ice, our Twitter account at AVG Time on Ice, is a major proponent of the policy of AGAB, all goalies are bad. However, we are going to go off script here to present the hashtag SGAG award for Some Goalies Are Good. Every once in a while, you might find a goaltending performance that you can look at without feeling the bile rise in your throat. Who are some of the goalies who have been doing that for you so far this season?
Yes. Now that Jade is not on this podcast or listening to me, shouts out Jade, I can go ahead and say with confidence that some goalies are good. Yes, this is a hot take, maybe my hottest. A few names that kind of came up, and I know I mentioned him in the last category, but obviously Tristan Jarry has been amazing for me in a few leagues where I've streamed him in. Darcy Kemper has been incredible for me in the Cupful, but I just think the injury and the mysterious timeline on that has kind of dampened his case for the SGAG award. To me, it kind of comes down to Bishop or Hellebuyck. Just been so consistent. I think Bishop was a guy who I faded in a lot of draft. Well, I had to fade in a lot of drafts because I'm a late round goalie drafter, and Bishop was going in the top 5 of goaltenders. But he's been quietly and consistently extremely good. But on a much worse team, I'm just so impressed with Connor Hellebuyck. 3rd in wins. He's got a decent quality start percentage despite being on a lousy team. So for me, he's my pick for the Some Goalies Are Good award. And in the very next breath, Lewis, I'm going to say it. Sell high on Connor Hellebuyck, though. I mean, on this terrible team, getting, terrible defensive support, would it not make sense to kind of hedge your bets on a guy who's been somewhat inconsistent to start his career? It's been he's been on and off each year. 2 years are good, and then in between 2 bad years. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Connor Hellebuyck. What do you think about that?
I think that's the right approach. You can now go to your league mates and say, look, this guy just won a Shifty award for Some Goalies Are Good from a bunch of people who can't stand goalies. So obviously he's got a ton of value. Yeah, This is a guy who is certainly his team's MVP in terms of really standing on his head for them to keep them in games where they really don't deserve to be. If you look at Sean Tierney at Charting Hockey's Hockey Viz, you can just see what we're talking about in terms of the level of dangerous shots that the Jets are willing to give up and just hope that, or willing or just unable to prevent. And just hoping that Helly can step in and save them. I have a Some Goalies Are Good recommendation too. This guy is not a starting goalie in the clearest sense of the word, but I think he will be in short order. And that is Robin Lehner. This is a guy who bet on himself to leave Mitch Korn, leave the New York Islanders' heavy defensive system, and head out to Chicago, a team that plays much worse defense, and just, sign this 1-year deal, hoping that he's going to be able to parlay it into a nice long-term deal next season. He's started the last 6 in a row for Chicago. He's been outstanding in them. He's won 5 of 6. He will be starting his 7th in a row Thursday night with that score, of course, pending. And he is the number 3 goalie in per game fantasy points on average among goalies with at least 5 starts in the Cupful. So this is somebody that if you picked him up, yes, he hasn't been getting the number of starts you might like to see, although I think that's going to change in the near future if Chicago is serious about winning. This is a player who has just been filling your rates and filling your fantasy points, and will hopefully continue to do so. I'm definitely on board with rooting for Robin Lehner and all of his success.
Some goalies are good. Robin Lehner does appear to be good. I'm with you.
Great.
You're not wondering why I had such a adverse reaction to that?
Well, so I guess my question would be, do you feel like he is on sort of the Hellebuyck track where he is hanging in there and bailing out his team, which is not so great, and we might see some negative regression? Is that your thoughts with Lehner?
I'm actually less concerned about negative regression just because there's a narrative that makes sense for why Robin Lehner's been so good the last few years, whereas with Hellebuyck we've seen the back and forth. For me, it's more so just, are we going to see him get enough starts to be the volume starter in Chicago? And that's kind of, I guess, it went unsaid, but that is what makes Hellebuyck so special, is that you're getting so many starts out of a guy who's then producing so many saves for you. Now, having said all of that, Robin Lehner has started 5 straight, and he's been excellent in 3 of them, so especially in the last 3 in particular. So perhaps we are seeing a bit of a changing of the guards, where we are going to see a 30 out of 40 starts for Lehner in the back half. And if that's the case, then yeah, I think that we could be looking at somebody who might be deserving of a Hot Wings award.
Yeah, I think the big question is this guy on a team that is going to be committed to trying to win down the stretch, or are they going to be in sell mode, thinking that they are going to miss the playoffs?
So do you think they would sell Lehner?
No, I just, well, if they're going to miss the playoffs, I suppose, why wouldn't you?
Yes, I would agree that it would make sense to sell Robin Lehner. I'm not sure that they will, but yeah, I think it's the same. I think you're making basically the same points that I'm making about Hellebuyck, where it's just like terrible team, but goalie is dragging them through it. And, some goalies are good. Robin Lehner, I trust a little bit more to be good moving forward. So if he's going to get the starts, then I think that you have a good take there.
I will say that does, the idea of him potentially being traded is one that does give me a little bit of concern, just because it seems unlikely that if he's going to a playoff team, he's going to a team that needs him to step in as a starting goalie, unless there's some kind of injury. It would more likely be a kind of Rask-Halak tandem situation that he might find himself in, where he may actually lose out on some starts compared to staying in Chicago with Crawford, simply because he does seem to be pushing Crawford out of that 1A position.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have asked me over the summer if I thought there might be a good playoff team that could use a starting goalie, I would have said the San Jose Sharks. I would no longer consider them in that running. Maybe Carolina would be an interesting spot for him, a team where, Petr Mrazek's been pretty mediocre, and they have James Reimer doing just fine. Maybe you could center a trade around Mrazek for Robin Lehner. I think that could be really interesting. Other than that, I'm not too sure that there's a great spot for him.
Yeah, I'm sure Chicago wishes that San Jose was performing a little better, because I bet you they would be looking to try and send him that way.
Let me float this one at you, and I feel like a little like I'm backstabbing my own brand here as a noted Big Save Dave apologist, but what if Calgary went out and they just cleared up $4 million in cap space trading Michael Furlick today? What if they went out and added Robin Lehner? That would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I do think that is certainly an interesting possibility. You've got some guys who are doing not so hot in the goal in Calgary. If they want to, they are certainly on the rebound from where they were headed during the first half of the season. So yeah, some interesting opportunities are out there. We'll see if any GMs are bold enough to maybe pull the trigger on such a deal.
All right, we are going to move on to the Missed the Boat Award. So, Lewis, this one is a little personal. These are guys who we did not jump on quick enough. This is kind of our mea culpa. Am I saying that right? Mea culpa?
You got it. You are a Latin master. Oh,
that's all it takes to learn Latin?
I'm pretty sure you've clearly studied your classics.
Perfect. Yes. Yes, so this is the Mea Culpa Missed the Boat Award for players that we didn't get anywhere, and now we are regretting it. My big one, and I believe that you have him in a league, and I do not, is David Perron. Was drafted in every league that I was in, and now I have him nowhere. He's been nothing short of amazing in St. Louis. Man, I missed the boat.
Yeah, he's really been a guy who kind of, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but like clearly he is very happy to be back in the friendly confines of St. Louis and performing back in a Blues jersey. Not a ton of success for him in places like Boston during his time away. So it's been really exciting to see this guy kind of come back and demonstrate that he is still really capable. Like we said on a couple episodes ago, he is on pace to smash some of his career bests in a number of categories. I was able to get him off of the waiver wire, not in my most competitive league, unfortunately, in the Cupful, but I do have him in my buddy keeper, and I've really enjoyed his consistent and really effective production. Another guy that we both have talked about is Bryan Rust. He's certainly, his ceiling has taken a bit of a hit with the loss of Jake Gensel for the remainder of the season. I am sure, I know, I don't want to pull on this scab when it's so fresh, Ben. I'm sure you will hear plenty about what Gensel's absence for the next handful of months is going to mean for the Penguins moving forward from Bryan and Elon on the Sunday Mega Show. But, I think that hurts Russ' ceiling, but he hasn't felt it too much because he's been involved in the scoring here on Thursday night. So at least in the short term, he still seems to be keeping it together. This was the guy that I had and dropped in that buddy keeper league that we talked about. He just has been really, really solid. Just like last year, he was a great streamer. This year, I think he's been even better.
Yeah, I definitely am not worried about Bryan Rust as long as he stays with Malkin and they continue to get that amazing deployment. And I don't really see who kicks him off the top power play right now. The Penguins are just down to the Hornquists at this point. Who I will say has been very, very good since coming back from his most recent injury. But that's kind of what you get with Hornquist. You get the ups and the downs. With Bryan Rust, I think we're seeing a true breakout, and definitely disappointed to not have him in more places. I think the one that you mentioned to me earlier, Cale Makar, is similarly devastating for me. Cale Makar is a player who got drafted one pick or one defenseman after I drafted Oliver Ekman-Larsson in the Cupful, and that might be my greatest regret.
Listen, if you want to feel a little bit better about yourself, I picked Corey Schneider before Cale Makar was drafted in the Cupful. So I will fall on my sword and let you off the hook for whatever decisions you may have made, because that is one that is haunting me.
You had like a bit of a mic drop about that Corey Schneider pickup too. I remember you being very, very confident about drafting him early.
Well, I was trying to defend myself on the old Twitter machine, and I was maybe being a little defensive. Let me just say, whoever it was who was talking to me earlier, if you are listening to us, I was wrong. You were right. It was a bad pick.
No, they were wrong. It was good. I refuse to let you fall on that sword, Lewis. You had good process there. Corey Schneider was a reasonable pick. Maybe a bit later than where you felt comfortable drafting him, but
and the thing with Makar too is, we spent like the summer kind of hearing, look, you very exciting player. He had a great playoff, but you've got to temper your expectations. Rookie defenders, you're much more likely to get 40 points out of them than you are 60 or 70. So you've got to really take it easy. Don't go crazy. Don't overdraft this guy. But I think a lot of us ended up underdrafting him. He's been outstanding. Obviously, that top power play is so good. Nothing much to say about him other than I'm bummed I missed the boat.
Yeah, I'm probably trying to make you feel a little too much better on the Corey Schneider train. But I think that with Cale Makar, the process needs to include, both opportunity and we need to listen to prospect folks and weigh that analysis without getting overhyped. I've seen what happens to people who overdraft Casey Middlestat, for example. But in the case of Cale Makar, the praise was so effusive from every side of the rookie or the prospect analysis train, and stepping into that top power play role. Obviously there was reason to think that Sam Girard might be good in that spot, which clearly I understand how comical that sounds now that we're 40 games into the season and Makar is a revelation and the front runner for the Calder. But, hindsight is tough, but you also need to be fair, and we need to consider the fact that at the time we did not know just how ridiculous this breakout was going to be.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I will say also, I appreciate your attempts to pick me up. If I need to pick me up, all I need to look is my position in the Tier 2 standings, and I feel very good about myself, despite having picked up Corey Schneider far too early.
There you go. All right, Lewis. We have another multimedia guest, do we not?
We do. So next up, we're going to hear from Elon, and he is presenting for us the Cigar Award. If you don't know, the Cigar stands for Can I Get a Redo?, which is a league that we are carrying out for patrons. I think we've got 3 divisions going, which is very exciting. And it's an opportunity for patrons to do kind of a mid-season redraft and play out the remainder of the season in direct competition with each other with, half a season's worth of data in the bank for them. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how some of these players are drafted differently. And let's hear what Elon has to say for who he thinks is going to be our top redrafted individual.
Hello, everybody. Elon here. I'm very excited to give out the next Shifty Award, and this one is going to be the Coffee and Cigarette Award for an early riser, i.e. the player that was not drafted in the cupful, but who I think should be drafted highest in the upcoming Cigar League drafts. And just as a reminder, the Cigar League, it stands for Can I Get a Redo? It is a league being organized by Ryan McLaughlin and Marcus Callanan. They're organizing like a faux cupful league that's drafting mid-season. We're going to have as many divisions as we can fill, just for the patrons, and it's not too late to sign up. If you are a patron, just make sure you message Marcus or Ryan. And if you're not a patron, you can sign up. KeepingCarlsson.com/patron. And yeah, we're going to be drafting mid-season, like early January. So it's coming soon. And I am giving out this award, the Coffee and Cigarette Award, to the player who was not drafted in the cupful, but I think should go first in Cigar League drafts of these players that weren't drafted in the cupful at all. The Keeping Karlsson Also Patron Fantasy League, of course. Okay, so first, some honorable mentions. These are the players that didn't make the cut. Also, I didn't check all 18 cupful divisions, but I did verify that in the top 2 tiers, none of these players were drafted. So one honorable mention is going to be Oliver Bjorkstrand, who was having an amazing run recently. On the season, he's doing okay, 23 points in 36 games, but he was on a run of just getting multiple points every single game. But he's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks with a rib, cartilage, contusion, and an oblique strain. So really bad luck for him and anyone who grabbed him. So obviously he's not going to be drafted first of the non-drafted cupful players in these upcoming drafts, since he's going to be injured for most of the rest of the season, probably, or at least for a big stretch. So honorable mention, Oliver Bjorkstrand. Another honorable mention, I'm just going to throw him out because I like him, Christian Dvorak. Obviously, there's much better options here, but he's still playing with Taylor Hall. Just got himself an assist on a Taylor Hall goal yesterday, so he wasn't drafted in any couple divisions. I think he will be drafted in the Cigar Leagues, but probably not the highest of all these players. Okay, some more serious honorable mentions now. Philip Deneau. He is having a tremendous season as the top line center on the Habs. 30 points in 39 games. That's a 63-point pace. He's got 4 points in the last 4 games. Doesn't get any respect. Wasn't drafted in any cupful divisions. Definitely should be drafted in all of the Cigar Leagues. Zach Kassian over on Edmonton. He was doing really well. He slowed down a little bit, as have all of the Oilers, but still 26 points in 38 games for a 56-point pace. Definitely deserving of an honorable mention for a Cigar Award. But okay, now let's get to the top 5. See, I'm throwing a lot of players at you here, but I'm going to give you the top 5 players, and then I'll tell you who is the winner. So, or maybe I'll just count down from 5. Number 5, Anthony DeAngelo, not drafted in any cupful divisions because everyone thought that Jacob Trouba was going to be the top power play defenseman on the Rangers, but that has not been the case. DeAngelo has been running that top power play for many games now. There was even a stretch where he and Adam Fox were switching back and forth, but now it's been like 4 weeks pretty much of DeAngelo running the show, and he's doing great. He's got 7 points in his last 8 games, 28 points in 38 games on the season. That's a 60-point pace for Anthony DeAngelo. Reminds me a lot of Erik Gustafsson last season. He ended up around a 60-point pace, and no one saw it coming. So definitely a top 5 well-earned cigar nomination for Tony DeAngelo, but he doesn't win the award. Neither will Anthony Duclair. We love Anthony Duclair. I know in short shifts they're talking about him all the time. I even have a hunch he's going to be winning another Shifty award on this show. But yeah, amazing season, 31 points in 40 games so far, 21 goals already. So he's on pace for more than 40 goals on the season. Definitely will be drafted in all the cigar leagues. But I still think there are 3 players who maybe should be drafted higher. Or actually, no. Maybe he should be a little higher than this next guy. But I will throw out next Alex Killorn, another nominee. Let's put him in the top 3. Killorn has 31 points in 35 games. I feel like no one realizes how good Alex Killorn has been this year. That's a 73-point pace, and he just keeps on producing. He had 2 goals and assists versus Montreal on the 28th. I guess he had no points versus Detroit yesterday, so he can't get points every game, but he's just, if you look at his game log, you're seeing points after points. He's on a line with Stamkos. He's on the top power play. Killorn should definitely be owned in all leagues, should be drafted in all the cigar leagues. Wild that he wasn't drafted in any of the top 2 couple divisions. Okay, so now we get down to the final 2. In second place for my cigar award, or I should call it the Coffee and Cigarettes award, it is going to go to Tristan Jarry. Had to get a goalie in there, and why not a guy who's played 17 games, seems to have taken over the starter's job in Pittsburgh, has a .939 save percentage. This is before, I'm recording this on Monday, so this is before the game against Ottawa today, so we'll see how he does. But Jarry's been amazing. Anyone who added him basically has a stud number 1 goalie on their team. Not drafted in any couple division, now must own. But the winner of the 2000, what would this be, 1920 Coffee and Cigarette Award is a teammate of Tristan Jarry. It's going to Bryan Rust. Bryan Rust has been so amazing. And yeah, maybe there's a little question mark because Sidney Crosby's going to come back soon. And we don't know if that's going to shift up the lines. But you got to imagine Rust is either going to stick with MacKinnon and Guentzel because they've been producing so well, or he'll play with Crosby. Maybe he could even stick on the top power play, but you can't deny 30 points in 25 games. He's on a 98-point pace. Maybe he won't keep this up, but I think he is the player who wasn't drafted in the couple that needs to be drafted first in these cigar drafts. So obviously it'll be really fun to check the actual results and see if Bryan Rust is the person who I'm predicting, but he's the one I would pick. So congratulations, Bryan Rust, on your first Shifty award, the Coffee and Cigarettes Award for Early Riser. Way to go, Bryan Rust, and way to go, Benn and Lewis. Thanks for putting on this awards show. Can't wait to listen to it.
I think it's safe to say that it's Elon's fault that Jake Guentzel got hurt. Now that I'm listening to this a few days after he recorded it.
Yeah, that's quite the tough jinx there. But very heartened to hear that Elon is on board with many of our award winners. I suppose he is just as capable of reading through the stat lines as any of us.
I'm still mad at him about the Jake Guentzel thing, so I feel the need to change the subject now.
Well, that's great because we are getting on to the biggest Shifty of the night, and that is our Shifty MVP at the mid-season.
We did it, Lewis. We got all the way to the end, and it's time. This isn't such a short shift. We're getting into the mid-sized shifts here. And yeah, so that means why not get down to it? The MVP, the Mid-Season MVP Shifty Award. I'm going to let you go first here.
All right. Well, I really struggle with this one because I wanted to think about VORP value over replacement player as I was discussing it. But at the end of the day, I'm going with a center. We got to go with Nathan MacKinnon. Look, the math simply backs it up. He is number 1 in average points per game. And let's remember that he did it with the massive slate of injuries that Colorado has endured early on in the season. With Colorado returning a full lineup to the ice finally, I think it is time for the Western Conference to be worried about what they are capable of. If MacKinnon can be that deadly, missing so many of his teammates, the sky is really the limit for him in terms of what he can do with a fully operational team in front of him, or around him, I suppose I should say.
Well, I love to hear it. I did get MacKinnon 5th overall because somebody reached for Pasternak at 2nd. Looked foolish at the time. I think it looks defensible now, we would all agree, but I definitely still think that you are right, that I would rather have MacKinnon in that top group. If you're drafting for next year in the Cupful, where are you picking Nathan MacKinnon?
I would probably take him 3rd after McDavid and Ovechkin. What do you think?
I think I might take him for a second. I think I might go McDavid MacKinnon at this point. He's just been so dominant in shots, and he's scoring a ton finally, and he's getting all of those assists. I mean, the shots over McDavid put him in the conversation as a possible number one. Yeah, I don't know. I'd struggle to pick him any later than 2.
Well, we'll see if you end up with the opportunity next year to maybe make that selection, or else you may be auctioning up there in Tier 1 Sweden, so you may have to just put your money where your mouth is in that regard. I suppose I'm a little shying away from putting anyone over Ovechkin in that second spot just because I've done it the last couple of years and have looked foolish for saying so. But I think you make a really good point that he makes for an extremely appealing option there.
Yeah, so this is a little behind, inside baseball.
Inside baseball.
But yeah, this is a little inside baseball here. Before I started writing for Dauber, I wrote a couple of sample articles, and I wrote one about how Connor McDavid should not be the number 1 overall pick this year. Few reasons in there, one of which was positional eligibility and scarcity. The other one was just fear of a lingering knee injury. It looked really bad in that injury that he suffered in Game 82 last year. So I was just concerned that would cause his ice time to, that they would take it easy on him and give him a little bit of a lighter workload to try and ease him back in. Those fears have been assuaged a few months into this season, so I was definitely wrong in that article to suggest that you should have picked Kucherov over McDavid, but I did make a secondary argument that put Nathan MacKinnon in that conversation, and what it really came down to for me is that he's just never had a season shooting above 10%, and I just thought, why wouldn't a guy who's so elite, who shoots so much, who has a lethal shot, an amazing wrister, why wouldn't he be able to shoot 14 or 15% one year? And I think that might be this year. So yeah, I could definitely see Nathan MacKinnon finishing the year atop the Cupful rankings and being in the conversation as first overall next year.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see how it goes. It seems like MacKinnon has been around forever, but he's a fairly young guy. He is right in the midst of his prime. The sky is definitely the limit for what he's capable of.
Especially, I don't know how much better he could do than the stretch where his entire team was injured around him and he still lit the world on fire. I think he was pacing for 140 over that stretch. But how many points would he have if Rantanen had been healthy the whole year? It boggles the mind, truly. I appreciate that you went this way with MVP because in my head I was forcing myself to go with someone further down, but I do think there's something to be said for a guy who went at 4 and has been running away with the scoring trophy in fantasy points. So yeah, good take. I like it. I did go very different with mine though, as I alluded to. And so this is a guy who was drafted by ADP. He was the 18th defenseman off the board. And by Cupful points, he is the number 14 player in all of Cupful scoring. That man is Douglas H. Hamilton. Dougie Hamilton, what a stud he's been this year. Hamilton is pacing for 76 points from the back end. He's got 13 goals, well on his way to 20, which would be a new career high. He's still shooting a crazy amount. He isn't quite hitting to the extent that he was last year, which, if you're in a multi-cat, that might hurt a little bit more, but what more can you ask for now that he's getting 60+% of the power play time on what is a very, very competent unit in Carolina? You gotta love your life if you're living with Douglas Hamilton.
Yeah, absolutely. Get the guy a lifetime pass to any museum he wants. He's just playing so well for your team. I'm really glad that he finally found a spot where the coaches were willing to give him the deployment he so justly deserves. And, I was talking about that value over replacement player earlier as I was trying to make my decision. And I think picking a defenseman who is really finally performing up to his potential makes a ton of sense because while there are a lot of exciting defenders out there, there are not a ton of them who are scoring in the stratosphere the way that Hamilton is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to, if you saw a photo of myself and our average time on ice compatriot Jade Bettine at a recent Calgary Flames game where we were sitting 2 rows behind Jeff Ward at a Flames Hurricanes game, I'm wearing a Calgary Flames jersey, and that jersey is my favorite Calgary Flames player, Dougie Hamilton. I was so sad when he got traded as a adopted Calgarian, and I wish that he was still on the team. I like Elias Lindholm fine, but he is no Douglas Hamilton.
All right, well, Ben, I think with that, we have successfully completed the mid-season shifties. How do you feel?
I feel like I just watched the greatest Oscars performances of all time, all in one. Wow, I think we've changed the culture tonight.
Well, I'm excited to see how these turn out, come season's end, to see if we made any good predictions, if some of our folks keep up producing the way that they are, if selling high on Hellebuyck or Lehner proves to be a good idea. So we'll see how it all works out ultimately. But I'm feeling quite good about this.
Yeah, let's just run through a quick summary of the players who have earned their awards tonight. For myself, I have the biggest flop award to Erik Karlsson. I have the Hot Wings Award for second half breakout to Jamie Benn. The Streamer of the Year award, I'm deferring to Cousin Dave with Anthony Duclair. The Some Goalies Are Good award for Connor Hellebuyck. The Miss the Boat award for Cale Makar. I really blew it. And MVP Douglas Hamilton. Lewis, why don't you run through your picks real quick?
All right, well, my biggest flop has a goal and an assist tonight, so way to go, bud. You're making me look like a chump. That's Brent Burns. We've got the Hot Wings Award to Shea Theodore, who I predicted for a 60-point pace the remainder of the season. Streamer of the Year to Tony DeAngelo. Some Goalies Are Good to Robin Lehner. Miss the Boat for Anthony Duclair. And MVP Nathan MacKinnon.
Awesome. I just want to say, as our first show back in the new year, Lewis, thank you so much for your patience in scheduling tonight. It's been a bit of a S show as far as figuring out that's shouts out Bryan for that censorship. It's been a bit of a struggle to get this one scheduled and get it figured out, but now I think we are back to our regular scheduled programming. So thank you to you, Lewis, for being flexible. Thank you to Bryan and Elon for giving us this opportunity. Thank you to the fantasy hockey community for being so welcoming and for engaging with us on Twitter at AVG Time on Ice. Lewis, why don't you take us out of here?
All right, well, we used Natural Stat Trick, Yahoo, and Fantrax to research today's episode. Thank you to Dave Betton and Elon Dabrowski for their guest spots here as we went through. Thank you, of course, to my co-host and yours, Ben Burnett. And we are looking forward to seeing you with some regular length short shifts starting up on Wednesday morning of next week. Until then, play smart and keep your shifts short.